Hey cats, it's Ed Zoom Fly Bud here. Today I'm testing out the 6th iteration of Nike's Zoom Fly lineup. Here we have in hand and on foot the Zoom Fly 6. It's been mainly a miss for the last few versions of this one. I really enjoyed the 2017 and 18. They were absolute bangers, the original and the Flyknit version. What do I make of this one though in 2024? Let's find out. Thanks for tuning in, people. It's always appreciated. Do hit that subscribe button for me and also give this video a thumbs up like. Drop us a comment as well to help with the YouTube algorithm, or even a super thanks as well if you want to help support the channel on a more ad hoc basis. Danke schön. This is a shoe I've bought with my own Earth credits, 155 English Earth credits in fact. Nike haven't sent it to me or anything, nobody's paying me to make this video. In my UK size 11, US size 12, I've got 286 grams or 10.1 ounces. I've got about 45mm of heel stack here in my pair, with about 35mm up front, so it's not quite the 8mm drop that everybody's making out. I think this one's got a slightly more aggressive drop about it, so I'm reasonably close to Nike's measurements, at least if you take into account scaling. So the tried and tested formula that I'm using seems to work pretty well. We got a rather wide 11.9 centimeters here, widest point of the forefoot, and about 9.4 in the heel. So in terms of a super trainer, it's not all that far off the measurements we found in the Mach X2 from Hoka, or something like the Brooks Hyperion Max 2. We got two foams here in the midsole. We've got SR02, which is on the bottom layer closest to the floor, and then a fair slab of Zoom X foam on top of that. Now it's quite tough to get some readings on both of these. They've got quite a thick layer of paint on them, so we've got to take any readings with a bit of a pinch of salt. I'm not going to slice these in half with a saw or anything. I want to run in them, and to be quite frank, you don't run on the bit that's inside, you run on top of those foams, so that's the key sort of thing we've got to take away from any review really. I've got a score of about 28 short A on the SR02 section and about 23 on the Zoom X one, but I think it's a little softer than that, mainly due to that very thick layer of paint. Let's get straight into the review in terms of the upper first. Now this is easily the best upper on a Zoom Fly model since the original or the Flyknit version. It's kind of gone full circle here in terms of the construction. It's a booty-like construction with the tongue actually stitched into the inner material. We've then got this mesh on the outside. It's very flexible, it's conforming. We've got some reinforced eyelets along the chain. I've kept it reasonably simple, to be honest. The heel area's got a traditional counter. It's quite considerable really. Reminds me a little bit more of that Hyperion Max 2 from Brooks. It's very elf-like as well. I've got quite the heel flare here away from the Achilles, a bit closer perhaps to some of the old Pegasus releases from a few years back. It does feel like they've delved into the bin and kind of pulled this out and gone, oh wow, yeah, why don't we do that again? That was a good idea. Everyone loved those shoes, and yeah, it works. There's quite some considerable padding around here in the ankle. I found it to be a great fit actually on foot. There's only really one issue, I suppose, with the upper that's easily resolved. The laces we've got here are those thinner ones that Nike sometimes put on some of their kind of in-between trainer and race shoes. The laces slip in the eyelets, and it does make it a little bit difficult to dial in the pressure on top of the foot to get it just right. I think some serrated laces would easily get rid of that problem. The tongue here is long enough this time for a runner's knot. You're not going to get laces digging into the top of your foot here at all. And there's a decent bit of padding right across where the final eyelets are, and that stretches down towards the toe box as well. It just eliminates any pressure that you might get there on top of the foot. Simple in design, in fairness. I've had no sort of tongue slide issues whatsoever, no heel slip, and I'm finding the upper true to size. I think the upper's a bit of a mishmash really between like the previous Zoom flies, the Vaporfly and the Alphafly, and they're kind of returned to the 2017 elements there that worked in the original Zoom fly. It does feel kind of like that shoe. Toe box width's pretty good. I haven't found it too generous, to be honest with you, though I think due to the quite rigid nature of the shoe, then some people might want a little bit more room up front, perhaps, as the shoe does curl up a little way in the toe box. So just bear that in mind. I don't think you really need to go a half size up there. So a really strong start in terms of the upper. Really, the laces need changing here to some serrated ones. I'm going to give it a 2.8 out of 3 for the upper after my initial runs. Midsole, midsole.
Midsole now.
So midsole wise, this is no squash fest. If you're after that, then you probably want to go elsewhere, but it's very close to some of the shoes that I really like this year, from the likes of Brooks with the Hyperion Max 2 and from Hoka with the Mach X2. I think the Hoka's probably the closest competitor to this shoe, but it is more expensive than this one. Nike are coming in just below that one, and they're offering up one of their best trainer midsoles for years with this. The two foams work really well together. It's a very tasty, compressive sandwich on top of that carbon fiber plate here that we've got within the two, and they make the plate a little less hard work than perhaps it's been in previous models. It's a real joy to run in this one. I found this one worked over a range of paces. Does feel nice when you turn up the speed and effort level, but it also feels okay when you're running at some recovery type paces as well. In fact, I found this shoe is one of those you put on and you don't quite know how fast you're running. It's that type of feel. Looked down at the watch and it was like, oh, right, why is my heart rate that low and why is my pace that high? The SR02 underneath the Zoom X is nice and consistent, it's nice and stable. The Duo just worked really well in tandem there to give you a nice quick feel without that overt squash that you don't really want in a daily trainer. The shoe felt really good at marathon and half marathon paces for me. Not entirely sure it's one I'd use for like 10k or a 5k. I can see this one working well as a long range trainer where you've got some sections of your run that are going to be a much faster or higher effort level. The foams just work really well without ever being too sort of unforgiving like React used to be in some of the past versions of this shoe. It's easily the best version since the Flyknit one in 2018, and I was a very big fan of that shoe. Stephen C, if you're watching, just get one of these. I think you're going to really enjoy it. I think I'll be keeping this one in the rotation just because it's so fun. Nike always seem to be reluctant to give us a really great carbon plated daily sort of trainer with a sort of decent weight, and they've finally done it in 2024. Why is it taken so long? One of the best plated trainers out there at the moment, midsole wise. Perhaps they could have given us a touch more Zoom X next time, and maybe a Zoom X insole as well, because this sort of open cell foam one isn't great. It just sort of disappears really as soon as you put your foot onto it. I'll give it a 2.8 out of 3 for the midsole so far. Outsole wise, it's a banger. Lots of waffle lugs here across the full length of the outsole. Little bit of some exposed midsole foam here, but it's really quite durable stuff. Felt really assured on dry roads and pavement, as well as some wet tarmac and somewhat more smooth, slippery surfaces. The swoosh have hit the mark here. This feels like a trainer, yes, but I think that people will be picking these up round about now, where winter's coming in, taking these out and using them for some speed workouts, and they're going to get some great grip. Where they've positioned the rubber as well, it allows the actual shoe to flex a little bit more, so you can get some nice toe off there. You can really dig into the floor. There's just enough there to protect that SR02 foam enough. I do like the fact that it stretches right back into the heel here, which was always a bit of a issue. It was always a bit of a wear and abrasion area. There's a midsole cutout here that might suck up a bit of debris, maybe some rocks, but I think they've cut it out enough and with a careful eye really to ensure that that isn't going to happen too much. It's easy to clean out anyway. I really like the aggressive nature of this forefoot rubber area. Loads of lugs with great grip abound. It's just consistent and it's simple as well. They haven't got all these weird bits to it. Very, very good Nike. I mean, there's been loads of failed attempts at this shoe, but They've kind of nailed it this time. So only lessened a little bit by rock collecting potential of that cutout section. A 2.9 out of 3 for the outsole so far. Value now. So we know that this one is coming in very slightly more expensive than the Puma Deviate Nitro 3, and it's quite a bit lighter as well actually than Puma shoe. It's cheaper than the Mach X2 from Hoka. It's round about the same price as the Hyperion Max 2 from Brooks, and much cheaper than the SC Trainer 3 from New Balance. I mean, it's 75 quid cheaper. That's just ridiculous, isn't it? Clearly bringing the model in only a fiver more than the Deviate Nitro 3 is a strategic move here from the Swoosh, and with this type of fun, usable quality to the shoe as well, I think it's going to sell really well. Loads of outsole and a very resilient sandwich of foams. Slightly odd choice of very thick paint on some of the midsole. I mean, it's going to crease and wrinkle up, and if that's a problem, then, you know, don't buy running shoes. But it's so much cheaper and fun than the Mach X2, and I like that shoe, don't get me wrong, but I just think it's a little bit overpriced, especially when you compare it to this. And we got around about the same weight as the Hyperion Max 2, but it's a slightly softer ride, and of course a carbon plate rather than a P-back swap. I'm really impressed with what we get here with the Zoom Fly 6. If you compare it up against like the Endorphin Speed 4, that makes it a very interesting proposition really. Same weight, but it's a good 25 quid cheaper. And for once, this Nike shoe is really well put together. All the sections are really well done, there's no dodgy glue marks. It almost feels like it's been made in a different factory to all the others. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 3 for value on the Zoom Fly 6. This one takes me back to 2018 when I first got the Zoom Fly Flynet, and how excited I was to go out running with it. A really exciting experience, and it's kind of what we got again here. It's the right weight, and it does some of the things that the Vaporfly does, but with a more durable kind of edge. Best Nike trainer for a long time. Have you picked this one up? Will you be picking it up? Are you a fan of the previous Zoomfly models? Let old Eddbud know down in the comments. Time for a musical interlude for you. Obviously, Halloween coming up very soon, and, you know, a house has to have the Monster Mash playing, of course. Bobby, Boris, Pickett and the Crypt Kickers. I mean, that is a great name for a group. I really like the old school kind of rock and roll delivery here on this one, with the sort of monotone vocal. It's absolutely fantastic. And you guys know I love some special effects, some sound effects here and there to provide a bit of atmosphere, and that's exactly what we've got on the Monster Mash. I like the bit at the end as well where you can hear, mash good. Yeah, that's great stuff. There's the bubbling of the experiments going on, and everything just sounds like it's been recorded in some sort of dungeon, which is, you know, exactly what you want this time of year, right? And it's one of the most catchy tunes around Halloween, or any time really. You can listen to this in the summer if you want to, or perhaps when you're out for a nice run and, you know, the birds are singing and all that, put the Monster Mash on. It's still a great tune. Regardless, don't have to wait till Halloween to listen to this one. Bobby, Boris, Pickett and the Crypt Kickers with the Monster Mash. Thanks for tuning in, people. Fortunately today it wasn't a nightmare shoe. I was a little bit worried about the Zoom Fly, but actually this new one's absolutely fantastic. Thanks for tuning in, people. Do hit that subscribe button if you've not done so already, and give this video a thumbs up like. Drop us a comment as well to help with the old YouTube algorithm. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you